An Oklahoma state trooper is so thin-skinned and gets so offended that he actually abandons his road piracy exploitation, where he's got somebody pulled over to economically terrorize them, and he chases a guy down for exercising his freedom of speech under the First Amendment.
You know it's against the law for you to interfere with me while I'm doing my business? It's called obstruction.
Let's take a look at the actions of this roid rage tyrant and the mentality that underpins those actions. Speaking of underpinning, did you take a look at how tight those frickin' sleeves are? Welcome back to the Here's the Deal channel. Let's go ahead and roll that intro.
So here's the deal. Here's the deal. So here's the deal. Okay, here's the deal, dude. Here's the deal. Here's the deal. So here's the deal. Well, here's the deal.
But here's the deal.
Here's the deal.
But here's the deal.
So here's the deal.
And here's the deal.
Here's the deal.
Here's the deal. Because here's the deal.
Here's the deal. Either give me your ID or you go to jail. How about that?
Catch me outside. How about that?
How about that?
How about that?
Here's the deal.
In pursuit of a Mazda heading south on 3 Points Road.
Well, let me ask you, do you have free speech? My next question is, what is free speech? And do cops protect free speech? Because we're going to take a look at this interaction right here from a Oklahoma state trooper it just tells everything about the kind of person that this person is. And all you have to do is look at actions. I mean, there are words and there are actions, and actions speak way louder than words. Are offensive words protected by the First Amendment? And is the Supreme Court above the Constitution, practically speaking? I mean, when they make these laws and they claim to interpret the Constitution, and then they create this case law, and then everybody takes this case law, and instead of referring back to the First Amendment, they refer back to a particular case law. We're going to look at one of these cases in a second that deals with fighting words. Can you name that case from the Supreme Court back in 1940? And the next question is, are profane words covered by the First Amendment? But I want to start off with the 14th Amendment, because we talk about it, but we don't usually read it. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. I got a serious problem with that. Why not just say that people in this geographic location that we've determined to be California or New York or Washington or Florida or West Virginia are men and women of the soil? Why not just say that instead of saying citizens? Because it already puts something on you that isn't there. You're just a human being that's living in this realm, not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. It says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So the 14th Amendment is saying that you and I are subjects, that we're subjected to something, that we're subjected to the jurisdiction of other men who make rules. It's like, hey, if you want, do you really buy this? That's why I'm not a constitutionalist. Because it's a con job telling you that you're a subject under the jurisdiction of the United States and of the state wherein that you reside. Are you really a denizen of the city? Are you subject to the terms, laws, ordinances, and policies of said state? No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. It's like, hey, you want to tap into the privileges and immunities found in the United States? Then you got to call yourself a citizen. There's a catch. There's the catch. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property. They do it all the time. And they do it with the blessing of the state. They do it with the blessing of the Supreme Court and the President of the United States and the blessing of the governors and the law enforcers. Or property without due process of law. We should do a whole video on this. It's not my intention to spend much time on this, but I did want to go over it and show you one reason I'm not a constitutionalist, because to buy into this means that you have to believe that you're a subject. And in order for you to believe you're a subject, that takes faith. It takes religious-like faith to believe in the church called the state, that you're a subject, or you're a member, or you're a cult member of said United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. So you want that equal protection, then you have to submit to the jurisdiction. And then the First Amendment, of course, and specifically just Congress cannot abridge freedom of speech, and they do it all the time. So I wanted to check out this video. I'll try to limit my commentary, but it's very important that we understand what's going on here. This law enforcement officer, this Leo, this badged tyrant, is conducting a road piracy operation where he's policing for profit, hoping to extract some money from the American tax cattle in the state of Oklahoma. And a guy happens to walk by who's unrelated to the whole stop and express through his freedom of speech, which is the First Amendment, as being part of the United States and under the jurisdiction thereof, he decides to exercise his freedom of speech, and let's see how this copper responds.
Okay, it's got a little kick at it. So you got your driver's license? You guys heading home?
So they say this is a trooper on a live PD cop show is about to violate a citizen's civil rights on camera. Now, this isn't my video, so there's a couple of things I disagree with, but I don't want to nitpick it, but I do want to say you're not a citizen, you're a human being. And the guy dressed in the clown costume with the tin badge on, he's a human being too, and he doesn't have more rights than you. You don't have more rights than him, but the actions are going to show otherwise from this law enforcer.
Okay. What?
Mouthing at you.
Why are you mouthing?
Let's see if we can hear what the guy said. I don't even know what the guy said. Let's listen.
License? You guys heading home?
Yes.
Okay. What?
Mouthing at you.
Why are you mouthing?
So he pulls a person over, because generally state troopers pull somebody over. They are the revenue generators for whatever state they're in, and they usually do extract money through their economic terrorism exploits. But they let this person go because, as it says under the video, which I agree with, this person just bruised this cop's ego. So they're going to let the motorist go, and they're going to focus their attention on a guy who, I don't know what he said, but it really doesn't matter. And we're going to go over why it doesn't matter. But the man in the white shirt decided to exercise his First Amendment rights. Let's see how the cop handles this.
See what this gentleman wanted to obstruct during my traffic stop.
He already takes it as obstruction. Mere words he takes to be obstruction. And obstruction of what? Usually they say it's obstruction of justice, obstruction of law enforcement officer duties.
You know it's against the law for you to interfere with me while I'm doing my business?
Okay, apparently I can't play this because when I uploaded it originally, it said that playing this constitutes a copyright violation to such a degree that it can't be seen or monetized. And what good is it to upload a video that nobody can see? So I'm going to have to give you a narration of it. And if you want to check this out in its entirety, I'll have it posted on my Twitter page. So the cop gets out of the car and says, you know, it's against the law for you to interfere while I'm doing my business. You know, the business of road piracy. Did you know that? It's called obstruction, or interfering with a police officer while he's conducting business. I'm trying to talk to the driver over here and you're screaming and yelling at me and taking my attention off that driver. So I'm finished with them. Now I'm up with you. What can I help you with, sir? So the guy says, why are you guys patrolling normal streets when you're highway cops? And the cop gets a little offended at this and says, highway cops? Is that what we are? Highway cops? Well, come over here and let's see what it says on the car. It says state trooper. So by the term state, what do you think that means? What would that lead you to believe? That our jurisdiction is what? Everywhere within the state. Thus the term state trooper, he says. And then the guy apologizes and says he's having a bad day, to which the cop says, learn a little something, right? Let's not yell at a state trooper. Again, if you want to see this entire interaction, I'm sorry I couldn't play it here. It's just that if I do play it, then I can't upload the video, because even if I do, nobody's going to see it. So I'll have it posted on my Twitter page. So is it true that protected speech or mere words cannot constitute obstruction of an officer? If you take a pure reading of the First Amendment and the 14th Amendment, yes, that's true. Protected speech or mere words cannot constitute obstruction of an officer. I think the way this guy has got his sleeves tied around his biceps and he's got the sleeve tattoos and stuff is absolutely ridiculous. What are you trying to do there, officer? You know, you could have picked another uniform. Did you have elastic put in your sleeves right here? Come on, give me a break. I want to show you this. A lot of people quote Chaplinsky versus New Hampshire, And I want to take a look at this because in my opinion, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm not giving legal advice, but in my opinion, Chaplinsky, the Chaplinsky U.S. Supreme Court case from 1942 violates the First Amendment. And we're going to go over this, and I'm going to show you why I think it violates it. I think it'll be pretty clear because you don't need a law degree. You don't need to be a politician. You don't need to have a high IQ to understand that the right to freedom of speech and of the press shall not be abridged. Freedom of speech is broad, just like shall not be infringed in the Second Amendment is broad. What shall not be infringed? It doesn't say. So nothing shall be infringed. You have the right to speak freely or you don't have rights at all. So Chaplinsky versus New Hampshire was a landmark decision of the Supreme Court in which the court articulated the fighting words doctrine, a limitation of the First Amendment's guarantee of freedom of speech. So what is that? That's an abridgment. That's an infringement. That's a hindrance. So Chaplinsky is a hindrance to the First Amendment because they say, well, yeah, you have freedom of speech, but it doesn't include what we call fighting words. And I'll show you, you're probably familiar with Chaplinsky, but this guy on April 6, 1940, Walter Chaplinsky, a Jehovah's Witness, was using a public sidewalk as a pulpit in downtown Rochester, passing out pamphlets and calling organized religion a racket. After a large crowd began blocking the roads and generally causing a scene, a police officer removed Chaplinsky to take him to police headquarters. Upon seeing the town marshal, who had returned to the scene after warning Chaplinsky earlier to keep it down and avoiding causing commotion, Chaplinsky attacked the marshal verbally. He was then arrested. The complaint against Chaplinsky stated that he shouted, "You're a GD racketeer and a damn fascist." Chaplinsky admitted that he said the words charged in the complaint with the exception of God. Okay, I said everything that you said that I said, only I didn't use the word God. I just said, you're a damn racketeer and a damn fascist. For this, he was charged and convicted under a New Hampshire statute forbidding intentionally offensive speech directed at others in a public space. So right off the bat, this New Hampshire law is a violation of the First and 14th Amendments, as you can see, and it says right here, as clear as you can see, no state, including New Hampshire, shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. One of those immunities and privileges is freedom of speech. So New Hampshire clearly abridged the freedom of speech. So what does Chaplinsky do? He appealed the fine he was assessed and claimed that the law was vague and that it infringed on his First Amendment and Fourth Amendment rights to freedom of speech. Case closed, right? You would think, oh yeah, the Supreme Court's going to look at this and just, they're not even going to accept it. They're going to go, of course it violates the freedom of speech. Nope, that's not what they did. Some modern legal historians have disputed the generally accepted version of events. And before I read you the conclusion of this case, this Columbia law professor said on the topic, describes the events as thus. While preaching, Chaplinsky was surrounded by men who mocked Jehovah's Witnesses' objection to saluting the flag. One man attempted to hit Chaplinsky in full view of the town marshal. So there's real violence. Real violence. If this is true, and this guy did try to assault Chaplinsky, the town marshal did nothing about it. Who warned Chaplinsky that he was in danger but did not arrest his assailant. After the marshal left, another man produced a flagpole and attempted to impale Chaplinsky. While Chaplinsky was pinned against the car by the pole, other members of the crowd struck him. A police officer arrived and rather than dispersing the crowd, took Chaplinsky into custody. En route to the station, the officer as well as members of the crowd insulted Chaplinsky. I don't know how that is. How can you be en route to the station and the officer and other members of the crowd insult Chaplinsky unless, you know, maybe as they were driving away, people were banging on the outside of the window of the car and insulting him. Chaplinsky responded by calling the town marshal, who had returned to assist the officer, a, quote, damn fascist and racketeer, and was arrested for use of offensive language in public. So what does the court say? The court, in a unanimous decision, upheld the arrest. Yeah, you should take away this guy's rights because he spoke words that offended another human being. Interesting. Writing the decision for the court, Justice Frank Murphy advanced a two-tier theory of the First Amendment. Well, that's dangerous. But you know why they're doing this, right? Because of Marbury versus Madison from 1803. Now, a lot of people say, hey, it says in Marbury versus Madison, any law repugnant to the Constitution is null and void. And that sounds good. But the overarching theme of Marbury versus Madison is that the Supreme Court gave themselves the power of judicial review, which means we, the Supreme Court, can take a look at the Constitution, specifically the Bill of Rights, and we can interpret it for you little peasants, and we will tell you what it means, and we will tell you what the parameters are, and we will tell you that there are limits to your freedoms. So Marbury versus Madison was not a good case. Don't appeal to Marbury versus Madison for, hey, any law repugnant to the Constitution is void, because attached to that is, hey, in Marbury versus Madison, the Supreme Court gave themselves the supreme authority over the supreme law of the land, the Constitution. Read it. Check it out. I got a video on this, and it shows exactly what they decided to do for themselves. They helped themselves to other people's stuff and the curtailment of other people's freedoms and sprinkled in some good sounding words in Marbury versus Madison. I'll leave the link in the description in the pinned comment if you want to take that out. And I highly suggest you do, because a lot of people misinterpret Marbury versus Madison because it does have that any law repugnant to the Constitution is null and void. Yeah, well, I know that and you know that, but that's not what the Supreme Court means. They're saying any law repugnant to the Constitution that we determine what it says. We define the terms, and we're the ones who are the arbiters of truth. We'll interpret it for you, and we'll get back to you. Certain well-defined and narrowly limited categories of speech fall outside the bounds of constitutional protection, say the Supreme Court, that gave themselves the power of judicial review. Thus, the lewd and obscene, the profane, the slanderous, and in this case, insulting or fighting words neither contribute to the expression of ideas nor possessed any social value in the search for truth. So the Supreme Court actually makes themselves the arbiters of truth. Murphy wrote in the decision, there are certain well-defined and narrowly limited classes of speech. Really? Are there really? There are limited classes of speech, which means you have limited rights to freedom of speech. Your First Amendment is limited. It's not absolute, is what he's saying. The prevention and punishment of which have never been thought to raise any constitutional problem. These include lewd and obscene, the profane, the libelous, and the insulting or fighting words, those which by their very utterance inflict injury. What happened to the good old days of sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me? Whatever happened to that? One man's obscenity is another man's lyric. What happened to that? No, it's all thrown out the window because the Supreme Court has the power in their hands to dispense and arbitrate truth, or tend to incite an immediate breach of the peace. It is, and how does telling a guy you're a damn racketeer and a damn fascist, how is that inciting or disturbing the freedom of speech? It has been well observed that such utterances are no essential part of any exposition of ideas, and are of such slight social value as a step to truth that any benefit that may be derived from them is clearly overweighed by the social interest in order and morality. So they're arbiters of truth, they're arbiters of order, they're arbiters of morality, and they're arbiters of your freedoms, says the Supreme Court. Now, there were subsequent laws in lower courts that challenged the Supreme Court and absolutely decidedly spoke against Chaplinsky versus New Hampshire. Subsequent cases in the Supreme Court, lower federal courts, and state courts have reached diverse conclusions on what constitutes fighting words and are outside the protection of the First Amendment. The cases have also varied on what context, such as the reaction of hearers, public officials, police officers, or ordinary citizens. You can't go by the reactions, because now you're not saying that you have rights, but you have feelings over rights. It shouldn't depend. Your decision on whether something is constitutional or in accordance with natural law or not should not depend on the reaction of hearers. Period. Seems like that makes sense. Seems like that's a reasonable assertion. make a difference for the limits on protected speech. A particularly provocative example occurred in Cohen versus California in 1971, in which an individual was criminally charged for wearing in a courthouse a jacket on which was written "F the draft." The Supreme Court held that the Chaplinsky doctrine did not control this case and overturned the conviction. So you can say "F the draft," but you can't say "you're a damn fascist" or "you're a damn racketeer." Besides that, if you said, if the guy who passed this traffic stop right here with this law enforcer, this Oklahoma law enforcer, said "you're a damn racketeer," he would be speaking the truth, because that's what it is. That's what today's law enforcement is. It's a racket. It's a scheme. It's a money-making scheme. It's revenue generation. It's policing for profit. It is road piracy. So if he said that, and I don't know what he said, but if he did say that, and use some of the most horrific language, that would be protected on freedom of speech, which this law enforcer swore that he would protect, defend, and uphold. And probably in the state of Oklahoma, he did it on a Bible. The court's opinion by Justice John Marshall Harlan II declared, quote, "For while the particular four-letter word being litigated here is perhaps more distasteful than most others of its genre, it is nevertheless often true that one man's vulgarity is another man's lyric." There you go. A legal scholar writing in 2003, over 60 years after the Chaplinsky decision, has noted that lower courts, quote, "have reached maddeningly inconsistent results." And that's what happens when you get involved in statism. Maddening inconsistency and maddening hypocrisy on what is and what is not protected by the First Amendment in the area of so-called fighting words. So what's obstruction? I found this was pretty interesting from the Urbanic law firm in Oklahoma. It says, obstructing justice in Oklahoma, crimes, laws, and punishments, obstructing an officer. Look what they say here. Talk about open-ended. Talk about you got no rights because they determine what your rights are going to be at any time that they want to, just arbitrarily. It's illegal to willfully delay or obstruct any public officer in the discharge or attempt to discharge any duty of his or her duties. Any duty of his or her duties? Well, that was well written. What if the discharge of his duty is road piracy? What if it is policing for profit? As we saw many times in the I-40 corridor, especially in eastern and western Tennessee, where they conspire against people who are driving on the freeway or traveling on the freeway, and they pull them over and conducting a fishing expedition. And then if they see large amounts of cash, it's the policing for profit I-40 corridor, Tennessee, just look it up. And they steal these people's money and they push them off into court. And these people are having to spend thousands and thousands of dollars in litigation fees just so they can get there. In this case, there were two brothers that had $160,000 and they were going to buy a convenience store and pay cash for it. But the law enforcers in Tennessee, the highway patrol, absconded with the money. It's civil asset forfeiture. It's also called theft. Theft by any other name is just as wrong and immoral. A person doesn't have to use physical force to be guilty of obstructing an officer. And then they say words alone may be enough to support a conviction for obstructing an officer. Words alone, really. And that's probably why this cop right here decided to go ahead and exert his authority and get offended, and his ego on his sleeves, well, his little sleeves, because he's got to show those biceps and he's got to show those tats. That's probably why he felt emboldened to do that, because these officers do not care about serving and protecting. All they have their minds focused on is harassing and collecting. This law does not prevent someone from recording the activity of law enforcement in a public area. Well, they changed that. When was this? When was this written? I don't see a date on this. I don't see a date, but probably since this was written, the governor of Oklahoma, Kevin Stitt, has signed an executive order saying you can't record police while they're on duty in public places. In some ways, Oklahoma is more restrictive and tyrannical than California, believe it or not. Because at least in California, you can record the police without there being some kind of executive order from Gavin Newsom over there saying you can't record police. This law does not prevent someone from recording the activity of law enforcement in a public area as long as the recording activity does not delay or obstruct the law enforcement agent in his or her duties. What if he said, let's yell at a state trooper, "Go back to work, punk." You get your paycheck from me and just start doing the James Freeman thing. You get back to work. You get back in your car right now. Oh, that would be interesting to do that on live TV. But then all the bootlickers are going, you can't talk to a cop like that. Yeah, take him down. Yeah, put the cuffs on him. Yeah, put him into a cage. He deserves to. Who does he think he is, exercising his right to freedom of speech under the First Amendment? So my question is, do you really, practically speaking, do you have free speech? What is free speech? Are there limitations on free speech? Do cops protect your free speech, whatever that is? And are offensive words protected and profane words protected by free speech? You let me know in the comment section below. Comment section, when you add comments to the comment section, it really helps with the algorithms. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to this channel, hit the bell notification icon, give it a thumbs up, share it with everybody you know. Don't forget to subscribe to my private email list through my website, highimpactflix.com. And don't forget to grab a shirt or two for you and your loved one, because I've got designs that will start a conversation like you would not believe. Happens almost all the time to me when I wear my Sheepvolution shirt, for example, because we are devolving, not evolving. See you guys in the next heavily censored shadow ban video. Subscribe for more tyranny busting content.